Ian Rogers, Chief Experience Officer at Ledger. Welcome back to Overpriced JPEGs.
Thank you so much for having us and giving me a chance to respond to the questions people have.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here and wanting to come on OPJ to do this. So, okay, let's talk about the latest news. You all released a firmware update. I believe it's 2.2.1, not that that matters. And it was the Recover update, which provides a mechanism for seed phrase recovery. And it's drummed up a fair bit of controversy. We're going to talk about people's concerns. I want to get your reactions to them. How would you describe what this firmware update does?
So it enables a service called Ledger Recover. We've actually been talking about this. I think the first time I mentioned this in a blog post was January of 2021 when I just joined the company, because the idea for Ledger Recover existed back then. It's a very difficult thing to tackle with all of the pieces that go into it and all of the security reviews that you need to do, which is why it's taken us 2.5 years to get it to market. And it was mentioned in a Wired article 2 weeks ago. So the reason it got on people's radar this week, and it got on in the wrong way, and this was 1,000% our mistake, is that it went out in a release note and people didn't know what that meant. But what Ledger Recover is a way to back up and recover your seed phrase. It also comes with $50,000 of coverage, which kind of tells you a little bit about who the product is for. The fact is that 90+% of people in our market have less than $50,000 in value in their wallet, and seed phrase management is a concern for them. They really do run the risk of losing their seed phrase or putting it in the wrong place. We know, all of us want the space to grow. So, we need to make things easier for people to come. Mm-hmm. I always say there's two main problems, in the usability of the world of crypto and NFTs. One is onboarding, setting someone up. I always say, the best way to start is to start collecting on Tezos. But that is a steep hill to climb, right? Just getting somebody some Tezos in their wallet, a wallet connected to object.com or Versum or FX Hash or whatever, it's a really steep hill to climb. So for sure, onboarding is just a key challenge in every application in crypto. The most basic, which is, holding your own Bitcoin, and maybe something more complex, like coming into the world of NFTs and specifically say Tezos NFTs, to give that example. And the second is connectivity, and the connectivity challenge we're trying to get to via Ledger Extension, but Ledger Recover is another piece to ease the onboarding, right? Because, we've made the onboarding as easy as we can with the Nano. It's really a lot better with the stacks because we've got this screen. But if when you get your seed phrase, your recovery phrase, if that doesn't concern you and you aren't thinking hard about it and it doesn't freak you out a little bit, you probably don't understand it, right? I think a lot of people are like, I'll write these words down. Maybe I'll put them in, notes or whatever, which is a terrible idea. Or maybe I'll email them to myself, which is a terrible idea. Or, it's really something that you do need to think about, worry about. So it is a stressful part of onboarding. And so what we wanted to do was to create a service for people, especially newcomers, where they can back up and store their recovery phrase, give them a nominal amount of coverage, so $50,000, and allow them to recover it should they lose it.
So I'm definitely somebody who's on board with the seed phrase process is not going to be for everyone. And when I was first getting into crypto, that was my first concern for how does this go mainstream when you've got these 24 words and you can't lose them and you're writing them on a piece of paper and you're hiding them in your house and that whole thing feels crazy and clearly something that's prohibitive. Let's talk about how you're doing this, which is, I think, where some of the frustrations or concerns really come into play.
Or confusion.
There's 3 shards and it's getting split between Ledger and CoinCover and a third party. And those shards it's like your encrypted seed phrase, essentially. You'll describe this better, but that's my high level overview of my understanding of how this seed phrase recovery works is you're giving your seed phrase something.
Yeah, so that is why it took us 2.5 years from kind of the first time I put this in a blog post to when we got it to market, because the question is, how to do it in the best way, the most secure way, and with which partners, right? So the solution that we landed on, I've actually, and it's important to note that this service is 100% optional, right? So if you don't want to opt into the service, don't, and there are no new threat models introduced to you. And we should talk about the confusion around that, because I think part of the problem is people feel like there's a new threat model even if they don't opt in, but that's because of kind of a misunderstanding around how hardware wallets work that we can cover. But the way that the service works, should you choose to opt into it, and by the way, it's $10 a month, so I don't think everyone's going to opt into it. So you pay $10 a month and get $50,000 in coverage. And what happens is your private key is encrypted, sharded, given to 3 different custodians. So none of those 3 have the ability to to recreate your wallet. No one has, not Ledger, not anyone else has the ability to recreate your wallet. I think that's also a confusion, because when people say Ledger, do they mean Ledger's servers or do they mean Ledger the device, right? So we don't have the ability. We have a third of your seed, and we're giving the other 2 pieces to CoinCover, and this is why we if you notice, you think about some of the drama from last year, and it was because people white labeled a product. They said, "Oh well, we're offering you yield." And they didn't say that behind the scenes, it was actually some other company that was offering you yield. And if that company went out of business, then you were screwed. That's why if you look at the Ledger Recover page, you'll see that CoinCover has basically the same billing as Ledger, same font size, if you will, because we know it's important for consumers to know, who are they trusting. It's also why the $50,000 of coverage isn't a footnote. It's part of the product that you need to understand. Okay, which wallet would I want to put this on? Which wallet might this make sense for? So you definitely need to know who are you trusting and with what. And CoinCover, the way to think about this is you have the leaders in security, Ledger, and then you have the leaders in custody in this way, CoinCover, and they've come together to create this product that allows people, if they want to, optionally, to back up and recover their seed phrase. And so that's the way it works. Now, the other thing that's in the middle here, and this is definitely something that you should think about as you're choosing this product or not, is the way that you recover is by identifying yourself as an individual. So it requires, not actually a KYC process, because, KYC is actually a bit of a different process, but it's similar, where, you share a government government document like a passport, and that's how you're identified. And then if you need to retrieve, you have to prove that you are that person. And we have a couple of levels of security there. Like the retrieving is much more difficult than backing up, of course. And then, like I said, if there is something wrong, if there is a mistake, or your seed is given to the wrong, or your recovery is given to the wrong person, et cetera, then you are, there is that $50,000 of coverage, but only $50,000 of coverage. Just like if you put money in a bank account, which is insured by the FDIC, it's insured up to $250, not to however much is in the account.
Although depends on, I guess, the bank and what happens, obviously, looking at the SVB stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so talk me through the specific UX here. Like if I'm a user who wants to opt into this, how does that process work? When I give that seed phrase for it to be encrypted and then sharded, where am I putting it in?
So I guess maybe this is a good moment to kind of pause on the wallet security side for a moment. The way that wallets work is, and really Charles Guillemet who's our CTO, is much better at describing this than me. So I want to point out to your audience, I'm here because I'm an NFT collector. I do have a degree in computer science. But it's from 1994, and I spent most of my career in Web 2.0. I am not a...
Go check out our past interview with Ian Rogers on Overpriced JPEGs to learn more.
I'm not a cryptography nor a security expert. So I'm going to do my best at explaining it the way that the great security experts at Ledger have explained it to me. But you're effectively, your wallet is a signing device, right? So the way that so you have an operating system on the device. That's the firmware. And anytime that accesses your private key to sign, because that's what it has to do to sign, it asks your permission. That's why you approve on a Ledger device with so many activities. It's also why there's nothing new here, right? You can take that. The question is, what do you do with that private key when you get to it? Do you sign with it, like we do when we send, or we confirm a transaction on OPENSEA, or et cetera? Or in this case, it's then being sharded, into these shared to these partners, and then can be reconstructed. Just like, if you open a ledger right now, you can take your recovery phrase, your 24 words, type it in, and it will recreate your private keys for all the chains that you're on. So that's what's actually happening. It's really very similar to what happens when you sign. It's the same access that you have when you sign. It's just a different thing is being done with it.
But I'm wondering, what is the moment in which that private key, right now, Ledger does not know your private key. In this scenario, Ledger knows 1/3 of an encrypted piece of your private key. How does that occur?
Okay, this is the key thing. The Ledger firmware does have access to the private key, right? And if it didn't, it couldn't sign transactions. And this is your wallet has access to your private key, and it doesn't matter which wallet you use, software or hardware, right? If your wallet didn't have access to your private key, then it couldn't sign transactions. So that is fundamentally the question: who are you trusting with that, right? And what operations are you approving, right? I mean, if you approve, we know if you approve the wrong operation, then you can get your wallet drained, and it's the same thing here. So I think. There's another way to look at this too, I think, which is super important for everyone. And the great thing about self-custody is that consumers have ultimate choice. And that's important to us as well. And they have the same choice today as they had yesterday. And they have the same threat model on Ledger that they had yesterday. So I think the way to think about this is you go, okay, look, all of us want more people to own more digital assets in the future. And we know that will be the case, and we want the space to grow. The question is, how do you want them to hold them? Do you want them to be custodial, like Coinbase.com and Binance.com, or do you want them to be non-custodial, like Ledger, Coinbase Wallet, et cetera? Well, you want them to be you want them to be non-custodial. When you want self-custody, okay, I think we generally agree on that. Now, do you want them to be in software wallets or hardware wallets? Well, you want them to be more secure. Hardware wallets are without question more secure, so you want hardware wallets. Now, as a consumer, you need to look at the trade-offs that you want in a hardware wallet. Ledger is still the most secure hardware wallet, and the actual threat attack hasn't changed between this firmware update and the last firmware update. Now, you do have, you look at it, you go, okay, there are hardware wallets which are 100% open source, but don't have a secure element. Or with Ledger, the choice you're making is to say, I'm going to choose a wallet that is 99% open source, but uses a closed source secure element developed by Secure Micro Electronics, which has been hardening this for 30 years. Or you could buy a hardware wallet which is made in China, or you could buy, so you have exactly the same choices. And the important thing is that Ledger doesn't have any more access, to your private key today than it did yesterday. And I think that's the thing that really surprised people.
I still feel like I don't understand in my brain how I understand this idea. You spelled that out well, of the private key already, your Ledger hardware, firmware, whatever, already has access to that private key. That's how it's signing transactions with your private key. But moving it from there to encrypted and 3 shards among 3 different parties is where my brain is short circuiting.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's a layman's way to explain how that happens, or a UX, again, even a UX way to explain how that's happening. If I opt into this, what are the things I'm going to see or do?
Well, I think one way to see it is maybe one way to look at it then is if you, when you sign something, let's say you want to send me some Ethereum, you're signing that transaction. And then the Ledger, and then that transaction is getting kind of bundled up on the device. Again, Charles will do a much better job explaining the tech, but let's not explain the tech. Let's say that the transaction is getting bundled.
Explain it for the layperson, yeah.
So when you sign a transaction, it is accessing your private key to sign that transaction, and that is really what you're protecting. Without that private key, no one can sign a transaction, which is why you want to protect it. And it's why you use Ledger to protect it, because Ledger has a secure element. And there's really 3 things that make you want to do this on a Ledger as opposed to something else. Ledger has a secure element. The computation happens in the secure element. So the private key doesn't leave the secure element when the computation happens. And it has a secure screen. So you can trust what it is you're signing. So now it gets bundled up into a transaction, and that transaction gets broadcast onto the Ethereum network, right? Because it doesn't matter. It's exactly the same if you're sending me $5 in Ethereum or $5 million in Ethereum, right? Like, we know that, we understand that. And what that is a signature by a wallet with your private key. So in the case of Recover, you're just doing this other thing with your private key. You're saying, the Ledger operating system won't give access to your private key without your permission. That's the way that it's built. You give that permission, and then what it does with that private key is encrypts it, shards it, and broadcasts it to those three partners. So it's actually very much... Yes.
Yeah, that's happening within that Ledger device, essentially, and then one of those shards
goes exactly
to the Ledger servers.
Well, it goes through that Ledger Live then. So, the way that actually happens, like, let's say you're using, MetaMask or Ledger Live to do that Ethereum transaction. That transaction is bundled up. It then gets given to the wallet. The wallet broadcasts the transaction onto the network, say the Ethereum network. And it's the same thing here, that, you get this sharding that gets, pushed into Ledger Live, which, by the way, is open source software. And then that gets pushed out, to the partners, and the backup happens.
Okay. I understand that better now. So let's talk. We've now started to get at this in the answers you've just given, but I feel like the big three criticisms that I've heard are or concerns. And I think this first one, I'm sufficiently convinced from the reading I've done that this is not true. And you've been saying this now, but the first concern or confusion was that there's now extra attack vectors being introduced as a result of this.
Yeah.
Say just a few words on that, I suppose.
So the one thing to say is, again, it's an optional service, right? So if you opt into the service, there could be an additional attack vector, right? If you opt into the service, you choose the service, your twin brother comes along and recovers your seed phrase, that is an additional attack vector.
So you're saying there's an additional attack vector in the moment of proving who you are.
If you opt into the service, you have a different level of, you have a different, attack surface, right? And that's also why we offer 50,000 in coverage. It's why it's taken us 2.5 years to release or get this product to release. It's why we've done, already 2 external security audits, and we're working on our 3rd right now. That's exactly that. Yes, exactly. So I do think it's important for people to understand, because you're always making that trade-off, right? You've got your seed phrase somewhere. Okay, so your recovery phrase, let's say. So, where is it? How good is your operational security? You're never without an attack surface. The question is, just really thinking about it and choosing wisely, where you would like it to be. And our feeling is that, again, with 90% of the audience having less than $50,000 of value, that this is a great product for them, because it creates ease of use, peace of mind, and coverage that is greater than the amount of money that they have. Now, if you don't opt into the service, it's identical. It's exactly like
nothing
yesterday.
Has changed.
Yeah, nothing has changed.
Are folks worried? I haven't seen this, but I'm wondering, are folks worried about some sort of slippery slope precedent here? Like, okay, this is opt in now, but this becomes a future requirement, or something about this becomes permanent for everyone.
Maybe, but we would absolutely never do that. We're also, we really have the best Bitcoin support on the planet. We were the only people to support Taproot day one. We support full node, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're Bitcoiners, and we ourselves, in many cases are maxis on various things. So, that's part of our ethos. We would never do that. At the same time, like I said before, and I think I speak for all of your audience, we want more people to come into this space.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do that, we've got to get to better ease of use. And I think this is what I said, when you and I spoke before, like, we really considered it our challenge to say, okay, how do we deliver better ease of use without compromising on security and self-custody? And it's also exactly why something like this should be optional, right? And we've gone to some, great details, like not even the fact that the security audits and all the architectural work that we've done. We really believe that anything that can be hacked will be hacked, right? Like that's factual and kind of the security expert belief. So you have to make it secure by design. It's actually the only way to be secure. Which is why, and also, then it does start to come up like, look, by the way, if you're somebody who is hiding what's on your wallet, like, please don't use this service. The service is definitely not for you. Like, I encourage you not to use the service if you're somebody that is like, I never want anyone to ever see what's on my wallet. Now, and that we've actually gone to a lot of pains to make sure that there is no connection between your personal identification and your actual wallet address.
So this is the second concern that I have heard raised, which is this KYC element. And I know you keep raising it's optional, because I'm totally with you in like that being kind of foundational here, which is no one is being forced to do any of this. You said it's not like truly KYC, but it feels very similar, right? Because it is identification, it is giving your passport. And so people are saying, oh, what could go wrong? Now linking our private key to our passport, what could go wrong there, sarcastically?
For the average user, I was with an art collector for dinner on Tuesday night. And I am going to sit down with her and get her into both Tezos and first Tezos and then Ethereum NFTs. This product is definitely for her. She's not hiding anything from anyone. She's not, working on her big bag of Bitcoin that she wants to hide from the tax authorities. She's an art collector and she wants to collect. And she, really needs this product and and she trusts Ledger. I think, that's the reality. And by the way, you can dox yourself in all kinds of ways today, right? I mean, you send money from your Coinbase account to your, Ledger wallet. You open up Ledger, you click buy, and you buy crypto on MoonPay. Okay, you KYC to do that. You swap using, at a certain level with swap partners. You have to KYC, and it's always optional, right? There are other ways to buy crypto, and many people choose those ways. But out of convenience and because they're not hiding anything, many people use products where they KYC to buy crypto or swap crypto. So it's exactly the same. I mean, you can open Ledger Live today, do a buy with MoonPay, and you need to KYC, and that's not a problem. I tell you, we do great business there with MoonPay and other partners as well, Ramp, et cetera. And that's not a problem. It's people aren't like, oh my God, I can't believe you have to buy KYC to buy crypto with Ledger. It's like, it's the way it is. So I think that, it's an optional thing. And that's the thing that is trip people up. They feel like there's an additional attack vector and maybe it is a fear of that slippery slope, but there's no risk of that slippery slope in terms of where Ledger's going.
The last piece of this is, I think, maybe folks feeling like there's just a betrayal here. Like the very premise of Ledger is that autonomy, is that personal freedom, this idea that is core to crypto, and customers just feeling like, oh my gosh, Ledger is violating this like sacred agreement that we all have hanging out here in this cool crypto club.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting for me. Like I said, we knew we would have some blowback. If I could do this over, I think I'd probably release the whole thing as a white paper 3 months ago, so that people could get their heads around it, beat it up, kick it around, see what they think about it. I guess the reason that I'm surprised is because, again, I've been talking about this product publicly for 2 years. I might have talked about it on your show. I certainly talked about it when I talked to Kevin on Proof last year. There was a Wired article came out 2.5 weeks ago that mentions the product directly.
Right, that. Yeah.
I tweeted about it and was like, hey, there's a product leak in this, and somehow no one noticed. So I think that's on us, because again, I think if we'd had a chance to go out on the front foot instead of the back foot, release notes, kind of that were cryptic, and they leaked to Reddit, and then they got to Twitter, and then you get Twitter on it.
The first way I heard of this was, I think Ledger has a security breach. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, something so far afield from what was actually happening, and like that's the game of telephone, where like when it first hit my radar, it was that. It had gotten really out of hand.
That's on us. It's really like, hindsight is 2020, and we have been, like trying to dig out of this hole all week. Although when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, which is what I told our customer care team this morning as we kind of shifted course on what we're doing there, because I think we've made some mistakes too on the communication side. That's why, and the good news is, look, it's one thing to get canceled because like you did something really awful, right? Like at that point you just need forgiveness. Like the facts here are actually quite good. And if you look at the take from people who have double clicked on what the product is and understand how wallets work, then there's kind of a like, I thought this was maybe a big deal, maybe it's not. And there's, so again, like I would look for those takes. And I think the thing for everyone to keep in mind is it really is a question of, like I said at the beginning, like how do we want people to come into this? Look, I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and this is crucial to the future of humanity, right? If we don't have decentralized security, then what's the alternative that you want? Like which centralized place, which company or government, where do you want the information to live, right? And I think that we agree, and I think we found plenty of people in Washington, D.C. who are, kind of real Americans who agree with us last week that we want ownership. Okay, now, how do we get the next 100 million people into that world of ownership? Because if you're on Coinbase.com or Binance.com, you're not in the world of ownership, right? By the way, and if you're on Coinbase Wallet, you are. So then it becomes a question of how do you want people to do it? As a customer, you need to decide, what do you want to do? Again, do you want Ledger, which is 99% open source and 1% closed source because we use a secure element? Do you want something that's 100% open source and doesn't have a secure element? Do you want there? That is the customer choice. And the great thing about this is it's totally portable, right? Unlike the kind of the pain of moving from iCloud to Google, right? If you don't, you always have choice as a customer, and we think that's not only important but really profound. So that's I think that our ethos hasn't changed at all. I've always said that's actually to me why, again, I know what I would do differently, or parts of it at least, if I did this again today. But the surprising part to me is that I've been talking about this need for seed phrase backup and recovery for more than 2 years, and it didn't ring any alarm bells. So, I think we were expecting some pushback, but not like we have. And I think part of that's our fault because of the leak, and part of that's our fault because of, responses here and there. But the fundamentals underneath are the same. And I believe ultimately people will realize that.
See that. There is a cohort of people in this space who definitely, whether they say it or not, they don't want mass adoption, right? And I think maybe some early adopters in this space, really, they love this very particular narrow ethos and world. And people who listen to the show know I'm not in that camp. Like I fully believe in a whole range of choices. I believe in custodial wallets as a choice, right? Like I believe in a whole range of options for people because we absolutely do not get to any level of mainstream adoption, which is genuinely what I want without a range of options. So I'm very much with you there, and obviously a fan of Ledger. So I appreciate what you guys are doing here for sure.
Cool. Thank you so much for the continued support, giving me a chance to talk about it. I hope that your listeners find it useful. I would definitely point people. I've been retweeting Charles Guillemet, who's our CTO, because again, facts matter. I mean, perception is reality, but facts matter. So to shift that that perception, we're trying to get out more facts. So Charles, and you can, I'm at ENCR on Twitter, and I've been retweeting him.
We'll include your Twitter in the show notes for anybody who wants to
Charles
check
is
it
a
out.
little,
Yeah.
I can't even memorize it. It's like PB3. But anyway, that's where to go if you really want to deep dive. And there are some people who have done some good takes on this that are the right ones.
There was a thread that I had read on the attack vector front, and I hear what you're saying, that there is an additional attack vector just naturally in the recovery process, where if somebody looks identical to you or gets access to your ID or whatever the cases may be, there's something there. But somebody had a good thread that the first 3 tweets are like technical stuff that I can't understand, but like the 4th tweet starts to get good in terms of there's no additional attack vector within the Ledger hardware device, for example, and starting to kind of explain, I think, some of what you were getting at here verbally with us. So we'll include that as well. Well, Ian, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll absolutely have you back on again.
Thanks again. Super appreciate it.
Thank you
so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.